Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really close look at the life of Ellis Alvin Brown.
Yeah,
Our mission really is to try and understand the key moments, the core values that shaped him. And we've got a pretty interesting mix of sources to draw from.
absolutely. We have the formal obituary, which gives us those kind of baseline facts, dates, family connections.
Standard stuff, yeah.
Right. But then we also have his own transcribed life history from 1980. That's gold for getting his perspective.
Oh, definitely. His own words.
Yeah, exactly. Plus marriage licenses, they mark those big life events.
Yeah.
And there's also a really nice personal memory from a grandchild, which adds a different sort of warmer layer.
Okay, great. So let's start at the beginning then. His roots. Ellis Alvin Brown, born August 2nd, 1919, Roy, Utah.
Parents were Junius Holmes and Lily Nora Kendall Brown.
And reading his own account of his childhood. Wow, it sounds like things were pretty challenging back then.
Oh, definitely tough. He gives this really vivid picture of their house, calls it a tar paper roofed house.
Tar paper roof.
Yeah. And apparently they moved it
Yeah.
several times, still within Roy. But the conditions, he talks about sagging floors, mice being a constant problem. Even dogs under the house, rain leaking in, sparrows, he called them spugs, getting inside. You just feel the instability, the hardship.
Yeah, you really do. You can see how that might, make someone crave security later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that comes through. He mentions his father had poor health, so his parents really pushed values like sacrifice, saving money, learning to just go without things.
Security above all, it sounds like.
Pretty much. It lays the groundwork for a lot of his later decisions, I think.
And his schooling was limited too, wasn't it? Because he had to work.
Yeah, very limited. He often helped out a family, the Jacksons, with haying and thrashing, and he specifically remembers their good food.
Which, like you said before about scarcity, that detail really tells you something, doesn't it?
It does. And he also made a point about making their own fun, things like golfing or hunting. That wasn't really part of their world for leisure. They just found other ways.
Right. So moving forward a bit in his life, marriage, he met his first wife, Dorothy Louise James, around 36, 37.
Yeah, through a relative, Connie Brown. They courted for about 3 years.
3 years, okay.
And then married September 11th, 1940. That was at Fort Douglas, Utah. And later, they were sealed in the Salt Lake Temple, which is a really significant religious ordinance for them.
Signifying that eternal family bond.
Exactly. And the obituary fills in the family picture. They had 4 children. Lois, born 42.
Okay.
Then Vali, born 46. Dale J. was September 1950. And Betty, the youngest, January 2nd, 1956.
And the obituary also mentioned the grandkids and great-grandkids, right? A lot of them.
Oh, yeah. 32 grandchildren and 35 great-grandchildren listed. It really speaks to the large family they built.
It really does. But sadly, Dorothy passed away relatively young, July 20th, 1983.
Yes. But Ellis did find companionship again. He married Lola Gibson Mybos, February 4th, 1984 in Ogden.
Okay. And Lola also passed away before him, didn't she?
She did, June 13th, 2002.
And he gained stepchildren through that marriage, too.
That's right. The obituary lists Lola's children, Diane, Ray, Eldon, John, Colleen, Cheryl, and Janet. So it shows that joining of 2 families later in life.
Okay. Let's shift gears a bit, talk about his work. It sounds like he had this real drive, this ambition for independence.
Definitely. He worked different jobs early on, UP Railroad, farming, the Navy base. But his life history really emphasizes this desire he had to own his own farm.
He's a boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, pursuing that dream,
Yeah.
the physical effort involved was immense. He talks about trying to get the farm going while still working other jobs. And he mentions one specific fall where he and Dorothy cut and loaded, get this 100 tons of beets.
100 tons, wow.
Yeah. He even said his own father thought it was impossible. And you see that work ethic, but also that drive for security maybe coming through, wanting his own place.
That's incredible determination. But it sounds like maybe that kind of work took its toll.
It seems so. He eventually realized his health probably wouldn't hold up to that kind of intense farming long term.
So he adapted.
Exactly. And this is interesting. He found contentment, it seems, working at the Navy base and then the Defense Depot, jobs that led to a pension.
Ah, security again. Back to those early values.
Right. It shows a certain pragmatism, adjusting the dream to fit the reality, prioritizing stability, which, like you said, echoes those early lessons about sacrifice and security.
Makes sense. Okay, another major chapter, World War II. He served in the Army.
He did. Trained in Texas.
Yeah.
And his life history gives some pretty intense glimpses of that time. He describes being on a ship for 26 days heading to the Pacific.
Long time at sea.
Very. And they went through a typhoon during that crossing. He also mentions passing Iwo Jima, described it as just a pile of ash.
Devastating.
Yeah. And then arriving in Okinawa right after it had been leveled by another typhoon. Just
Yeah.
imagine witnessing that level of destruction.
Must have left a mark. But wasn't there also a really significant personal experience during his service? A spiritual one?
Yes, this seems absolutely pivotal for him. He talks about being out on the ship's deck one time, just looking at the ocean, the sky, and feeling, really for the first time, he says, this overwhelming sense of a supreme being. He was 26.
Wow.
He said before that he kind of thought life was just work, work, work until you die. But this moment, it really changed him. It sparked this desire to, encourage faith in others.
That's a profound shift from just survival thinking to something deeper.
Absolutely. And clearly stuck.
Yeah.
Because he mentioned, despite not being super involved in church before work got into the way this experience was foundational.
Did he mention connecting with others of his faith during the war?
He did. He mentions meeting another LDS serviceman in Korea, a man named Gray, and attending the very first LDS conference held there. He specifically recalled how moving it was when they sang the hymn, "We Thank Thee, O God, for a Prophet."
And the grandchild's memory added something to this too, right? About seeing something.
Yeah, that's a really interesting personal touch. The grandchild shared a family belief that Ellis actually saw an image of Christ in the waters during that experience on the ship.
Whether literal or deeply symbolic, it's clear how powerful that moment was.
Undeniably. And it cemented his decision, he said, to raise his family actively in the church from then on.
And the records show he did become very involved. He mentioned being baptized, but not active because of work.
Right, early on, but later. His life history lists several leadership callings he held in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Elders Quorum President, one of the 7 presidents of 70.
Those are significant responsibilities.
They are. And he served as a stake missionary, too. That means he was focused on sharing his faith locally.
Did he talk about that experience?
He did. He actually credited the support and friendship of people in his local congregation, his ward, for helping him bring 9 people into the church during that time. He really emphasized community.
That's interesting. And wasn't there a story about a cow?
Oh, right. Yes. A kind of unusual anecdote. While he was serving that mission, his cow apparently died in a ditch.
Oh, no.
But he saw it, interestingly, as a blessing in disguise because he never bought another cow, and shortly after, he was able to have a knee operation he needed.
Huh. Finding the positive spin.
Yeah, shows his perspective, doesn't it?
Oh.
He also served 5 years as ward clerk. That's like the congregation secretary.
Yeah.
And he mentioned needing someone else to do the typing for him.
Resourceful.
And he expressed real appreciation for the high priest group and the whole Canesville ward community. He moved there in 1948 and lived there for a long, long time.
And that grandchild's memory again about home teaching and his last words.
Yes, very poignant. The grandchild remembered he was always faithful in doing his home teaching, visiting other church members. And apparently his very last words were, "Always stay close to the church."
Wow. That says everything about his priorities at the end.
He really does.
So thinking about his later life, his personality, he noted getting sick more often as he got older, which is common.
But there's that memories from Todd Burrow that paints a picture of him still having that strong work ethic. Even later on, he maintained his farm, his horse, barn, cats.
Yeah.
And he was diligent about using his treadmill.
Kept active. Sounds like he held on to parts of that life he loved.
Yeah, he seemed to enjoy what he called an old-time Western life. Cowboy poetry, camping, yodeling.
Yodeling?
Yodeling, yeah. And ice cream. Big fan of ice cream. And visiting family was clearly very important.
How is he described, generally?
Mostly as quiet, humble, sometimes kind of serious. But apparently he could surprise you with an unexpected joke.
The quiet ones.
Exactly. And one thing that really bothered him was when family members didn't get along. That suggests he really valued harmony.
That fits with the community focus, too. And speaking of community, he shared some powerful stories about receiving help, didn't he?
Oh, definitely. He vividly remembered when he had a kidney operation, he was only 32. Members of his ward, he named Bishop Alvin Anderson, Merlin Green, Doug Jones, Bishop Ronald Schultz. They came and spread manure and plowed his field for him.
Wow, that's real community support.
Huge. And those acts clearly stayed with him. He also remembered a man, Glenn Jackson, being very honest and giving him rides on his milk truck before he had a car.
Little kindnesses.
Exactly. And even recalled his first Sunday school teacher, Elta, and going to church with a horse and buggy back then. And the get well cards he got during that kidney operation, he said they brought tears of joy. It really shows how much that support meant.
Such telling details. So, wrapping up his life story, the obituary gives us the final details. He passed away at home in West Haven.
Yes, Monday, November 18th, 2002. He was 83.
Funeral was held a few days later, November 22nd, at the Rocky Mountain Chapel in West Haven, and interment in Ogden City Cemetery.
And they made a point to thank hospice for Utah for their loving care at the end.
Okay. So, reflecting on Ellis Brown's life, looking across all these sources, what are the main takeaways for you?
Well, several things really stand out, I think. His resilience, definitely, coming through those tough early years.
For sure.
That incredible work ethic, which was just a constant thread. And then that really profound spiritual turning point during the war, how much that reshaped his priorities.
Yeah, that shift is striking. You see how those early experiences in Roy, the hardship and the need for security really drove his work life initially.
Absolutely. But then there's this deep dedication to family, which grew and grew, and his commitment to his church in the second half of his life, that becomes so central.
And the community aspect, all those stories of helping and being helped, it wasn't just about him, it was about those connections.
Exactly. You really see a noticeable evolution, don't you?
Yeah,
From a life initially defined by maybe hard physical labor and
right.
just making ends meet,
Yeah.
to one where spiritual life, family unity, and community involvement became much more the focus later on.
It really does make you think.
Yeah. And how maybe those seemingly small things, a neighbor helping out a get well card, a ride into town, how much those acts of connection can really echo through someone's entire life story.